Hello, and welcome to the book report. The series I'd like to tell you about today is very controversial in so many different ways. This series touches on a subject that was once swept under the rug and not talked about. It was a shameful family secret that many children had to endure simply because there was nowhere for them to turn, until books like today's offering brought this humiliating and degrading practice into the limelight. I'm talking about the reprehensible act of child abuse. In today's world, responsible adults who are in close contact with children, such as teachers or other school officials, medical practitioners, daycare providers, or any other child caregivers, are required to report any suspicions of abuse or neglect to the proper authorities. In the 1960s and early 70s, however, when the incidents in these books were taking place, the school officials responsible for reporting the heinous acts they were becoming aware of could have easily lost their jobs. The Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act was passed in 1974, the year after David Pelzer was taken away from his mother. Bringing the horrors of child abuse into the limelight helps to further awareness of the problem, which will, in turn, hopefully lessen the occurrences of such acts. A second reason for the controversy of this series of books deals with the overall lack of plausibility of some of the content. There are many who have commented that several of the abusive acts perpetrated upon Pelzer would have killed a grown man, much less a very young child. It is believed, however, that much of the abuse is being remembered from the viewpoint of a very young child, and that some of the incidents may have been exaggerated. Even as adults, when we're in pain, time seems to stretch endlessly, and young David's recollection may have made a few minutes of torture seem like hours. Now, the importance of this series, as professed by psychologists and psychology instructors alike, is that it brings awareness to the issues of child abuse and gives a firsthand account of what thoughts and feelings the victims of child abuse must suffer. Because it follows an abused child from his earliest recollections of his life through his time in foster care and into his adulthood, the reader shares the life journey with the victim. For these reasons, these books have often been recommended reading in many psychology classes. Now, the first book in the series is A Child Called It, One Child's Courage to Survive. It is the outpouring of a small boy's pain and torture at the hands of his alcoholic mother, and may be difficult to handle for sensitive readers. The book is very graphic in detail, as David Pelzer remembers the sorrow and fear and loneliness that filled his young life. Every detail of every horrible game his mother perpetrated upon him is seen through the eyes of a boy from the age of 4 until the age of 12. When the school officials who were aware of his misery finally called the authorities and had him removed from his home. For years, young David is an outcast from his family, told that he's not a part of the family, but a thing, a servant, an it. He wears rags, is starved and beaten, and made to endure such horrendous agony that many would have found too unbearable to endure. But David Pelzer proves to be a survivor and manages to hold on to one fervent hope, that someday he will have a family and someone who loves him. Now, the second book, The Lost Boy, A Foster Child's Search for the Love of a Family, depicts his life in the foster care system. Through his teens, he is moved from one foster family to another through no fault of his own. As he begins to settle into each set of circumstances, he's moved yet again, until he finally feels that he will never be able to call one place home. He becomes numb to the system, always trying to fit in somewhere, even if it means getting into trouble. Finally, after 5 different homes, he finds a family who teaches him that love does not have to be earned, but is given freely, and that no matter what he was forced to believe in the past, he is worthy of kindness and compassion and love. The third and final book in the series A Man Named Dave, A Story of Triumph and Forgiveness, is the conclusion to Pelzer's life story. It follows his triumphs and achievements in the Air Force, the struggles he had in his first marriage, and the joy he found in his own son. This book brings to light what can happen when a spirit refuses to be broken. As an adult, David Pelzer has more reason than most to feel sorry for himself and to give up on life. Instead, he sees a vision of a better life and works hard to reach whatever goals he sets for himself. Even when seemingly insurmountable hurdles throw themselves in his path, David manages to overcome them and convince himself, as he eventually told his mother, that one day he would make something of himself. Today, David Pelzer is a motivational speaker. He talks about resilience and the power of positive thinking. He's learned a lot through his studies about the cycle of child abuse and eventually came to the realization that his grandmother was very much like his mother. He's often wondered if perhaps his mother was an abused child as well, creating a cycle of abuse. He also knows about target child selection, which causes an abuser to select one child to vent their rage on to the exclusion of others. He realizes that of his mother's 5 sons, he is that target. The only thing David Pelzer never learned and always wanted to know was why. Thank you so much for joining me on this edition of the Book Report. I hope you have found something that you would like to read.